Is there a scandal brewing in Los Angeles? Allegations from a former Clippers employee could land them in hot water with the league over Kawhi Leonard's recruitment. Plus, it's a tale of two unicorn debuts as Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren start their sophomore season. That's all ahead on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Doug Branson, host of the Locked On Hornets podcast, and your shot clock Sherpa as we whip around the Locked On Podcast Network's list of NBA podcasts, breaking down the biggest NBA stories from our local experts. With me today are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts from the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior writer for the Action Network. We've got Matt Moore. And from the Locked On Bulls podcast, we've got Haize rocking the Bears gear, ready for Sunday, looking good. All right, let's get right into it. Yesterday, folks, we talked about the Philadelphia 76ers currently being investigated by the NBA. Now it looks like the Los Angeles Clippers could be the next team invited into Adam Silver's office. A former Clippers strength and conditioning coach, Randy Shelton, has filed a lawsuit alleging wrongful termination and mishandling of Kawhi Leonard's injury management. Shelton claims he was part of a covert recruitment effort for Leonard that possibly violated NBA tampering rules, and that he was fired after raising red flags over how the team prioritized Leonard's performance over his long-term health. Let's kick it off here. Haize, with Leonard sidelined indefinitely, does this lawsuit expose deeper issues in the Clippers' player management, or is this an example of an overreach by a former employee looking to assign blame for essentially getting fired?
I think it could be a bit of both, but remember how I ended yesterday's episode? The Clippers, I told the fan base, I told them it's always going to be something. I told you guys yesterday. Like, it doesn't surprise me. It honestly would not surprise me, all jokes aside, if it is some tampering going on there. Now, I haven't seen anything that to me gives me any indication that I just need to outwardly believe it, but nothing surprises me with this Clippers organization. It's always going to be something. I told you guys. I told you. I'm a prophet.
Yeah, I mean, look, why are we worried about tampering? Everyone does this. Like, oh, every free agent signs in the first 10 minutes of free agency. Wow, got that deal done quick. What are we doing? Like, this is how it's always been done. The league does not need to pretend. Like, it's fine. Just let it go. One of the things that drove me nuts about this story is that the original report on this, and like you even mentioned it, Doug, you're like, a former Clippers strength and conditioning coach. Let's be more accurate. Kawhi Leonard's personal trainer. Like, this is a Kawhi story. It's a Kawhi thing again. This is the second time out of 3 places he's played where there's been this type of a problem. Are you just telling me that, like, oh no, everyone else is fine, but they just, like, the Spurs and the Clippers completely manhandled this? The Clippers have been more cautious with him than anyone. We had changes to the league policies because of the load management that they engaged in. What are we doing? If you look through it, there's some serious allegations in there. The idea of them asking him that not having him diagnosed when he may have suffered a concussion, that's a serious allegation. Like, that is an extremely dangerous allegation. But if you read the rest of this complaint, it reads a lot like, I'm suing the Clippers because they asked Kawhi Leonard to, I'm checking my notes here, play basketball. That's the outrage here. How dare you ask Kawhi Leonard to play basketball? And I get it. Like, Kawhi's got what many have kind of reported is probably a degenerative issue with his leg that has probably caused the corresponding things. I'm not debating that Kawhi Leonard has serious injury issues. But we also cannot look at the history of Kawhi Leonard and not go, yeah, a lot of shady stuff has gone consistently on, and it never ends well with him.
Yeah, I think part of this was that there was a recommendation that a particular injury take almost 2 years of recovery time, and there was some pushback on that, which I think would be natural. That seems like a crazy timeline. So, Haize, there are sort of 2 parts of this, right? There's the player management, injury management accusations, and then there are the things that I think could more likely land the Clippers in trouble with the NBA, which are these tampering allegations. How much weight do you give to those in terms of Los Angeles maybe wanting priority over health records when the supposed covert recruitment went down? What do you think about that, Haize?
I mean, if there's anything that actually proves that any of this even happened, the NBA does have to act. Like I don't want to overlook that. Like they have to take some type of action if they can prove it. But to Matt's point, like everybody tampers. There's just tampering everywhere. Tampering is part of the league. It's always been part of the league. I get it. You want to get it out of there, but you can't completely. All these people talk like. I can foresee the NBA doing something depending on how much noise this makes as far as some type of punishment. I don't know the severity of it, but the NBA does have to seriously investigate it at least. They have to do that.
I mean, they can. I think they don't have to seriously investigate it. I think they have to like baseline investigate it. If they want to slap him with a second round pick, fine. It's not like the Clippers have any picks for the next 17 years anyway, so it's fine. Issue them a huge fine. I'm sure that's really going to ding Steve Ballmer. But with the way that currency and information is such an underground market in the NBA consistently through trainers, staff, team executives, marketing professionals, and of course the agents, I just don't see the point in all this. Like, yes, teams need to try and keep their guys. You know how you do that? Win a lot of games, keep them happy, and offer them the most money. You do those things, you're going to be able to keep them most times, unless you're the Raptors because of Kawhi Leonard, because he doesn't care. So there's no way to solve this. I don't know why we're making a big deal out of it.
Okay, final question on this. So I cover the Hornets, and on the way out, Steve Clifford, the former twice coach of the Charlotte Hornets, discussed a lot about how the NBA has changed in terms of the number of people involved with organizations. And it goes to something you were just saying there, Matt, that the list of people that are assigned to individual players becoming parts of staffs has grown tremendously over the past couple of years. And you have an example here of someone that was tied to Kawhi but was a member of the Clippers and now is involved in this lawsuit. My question is, should teams take a closer look at trying to avoid hiring folks that are directly involved with players as part of their overall staff? Or, and I'll take it one step further and give you a little bit more to chew on, should the NBA get involved here, or is that too much influence over front office operations? Should the NBA say, all right, we got to figure this whole thing out with players associates being involved with teams? Matt, we'll start with you.
Yeah, no, teams would freak out if you told them that they can or cannot hire people. Like the owners are never going to approve those kind of changes. We're going to get zero place with that. They always want autonomy. They don't like when the league tells them anything. They don't like when the league's like, hey, could you share if the guy had an MRI? How dare you? That's not going to happen. And so the question then becomes, should teams do it? And I think teams should do it because it makes your organization stronger. You should be the ones dictating your team. It's your team. It's the squad. There should be a structure. That's not to say that players don't have input. It's not to say that players don't have impact, but that's how this should do. Everyone should do their job. If you're the leader in the locker room, you should lead in the locker room. If you're the front office head, you should make decisions on roster. If you're the coach, you should decide rotations. That's not how the NBA works. And I think this is a tough line to walk because I don't want to take away player empowerment, but I also know that a lot of this is it's player empowerment. What an amazing thing. What does that mean? His cousin gets to have a job on the team. It's just really complicated, and not all of it's bad. There's a lot of good people that have come out of these type of structures, guys that have gone on to have successful careers on multiple teams. But at the end of the day, most people in the NBA don't get to do their job because of the politics involved with how much money there is in the NBA.
Haize, is it possible that the Clippers prevent this from being a distraction?
Great question, Doug.
Is it possible? Is it probable? I said, is it possible? I'm trying to, give some hope to the Clippers fans out there.
Yes, it's possible. I mean, listen, the bigger distraction is Kawhi Leonard going to get on the court now? That's the bigger distraction. Of course, this is going to be a story. It's going to be a thing. But I think after a week, everybody else is going to be focused on basketball. Let the NBA and the Clippers front office and organization worry about that. But I think for the most part, the fan base is going to focus on basketball shortly thereafter. Are there going to be jokes on social media and things? Absolutely. But then again, that's part of the NBA culture at this point as well. You got to take the social media jokes with everything else.
Okay, well, let's shift our focus to the on-court action. Coming up, more debuts as the NBA season kicks off this week. Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren showed two very different versions of a sophomore start. That's ahead on Locked On NBA. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. And in tonight's NBA action, the team that I cover, the Charlotte Hornets, they're taking on the Atlanta Hawks. And I'm seeing LaMelo Ball, 14 rebounds plus assists. All I have to do is pick more or less. And I'm telling you right now, I'm going to pick more because the Hornets are very injured right now. LaMelo is going to be asked to do a lot, and I think he is going to step up to the challenge. So I'm going more on 14 rebounds and assists for LaMelo Ball. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDON NBA, to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. There is a Locked On podcast for every local team that we're talking about on this show, whether it be the Clippers, the Spurs, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Search for Locked On, your team, wherever you get podcasts. There's a lot of hype building for Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren, even more so than in their rookie year for their sophomore campaign debuts. And they both got started last night. Let's check in with Locked On Spurs first. Host Jeff Garcia talks about Wemby's opening night.
28 minutes, 17 points, but 5 for 18 from the field, 1 for 8 from the 3 line. Made all his free throws, 6 for 6. But again, it wasn't that dominant performance. How bad was it? He was a negative 20 in the plus-minus column. He was taking kind of some head-scratching shots. He wasn't really trying to dominate in the paint as I thought he would. Sure, they got Derek Lively, and they got some other bigs, Kleba, but he should be able to take them. But Lively really gets up for Wemby. You can see that. He gets up for him, and he will play at him and go at him. And I saw what Dallas was doing. We saw Luka pickpocket Wemby, not once, but a couple times during the game. We saw a lot of guys just swarm him and cleanly steal the ball from him. So if that's an indication of how teams are going to defend him, the Spurs need to adjust for that, and Wemby as well too.
So our friends at FanDuel had Victor Wembanyama as the favorite for most improved player, defensive player of the year, and high in the MVP odds. Matt, does a bad night in the opener change your opinion of how high he can reach this season?
I think it changes it a little bit. You don't want to overreact to one game. He could have had a bad night, but for me, it's more about process. I hated his process last night. Like he's walking into off balance, kind of pull up jumpers. The footwork isn't great on those. He's getting bodied. He got bodied by Derek Lively. Like Derek Lively worked him on both ends of the floor. And that's, to me, is like a real issue here, is that Wemby supposedly added all this muscle and he still looks like a guy that you can kind of push around and throw around. It's not like Lively's a second-year player. It's not like he's Nikola Jokic. And so that's going to continue to be a problem for him. I still think he's going to be this huge impact player defensively because of his ability to block shots, and he's got really great instincts. But the shot doesn't look any cleaner. He doesn't look like he's improved as a driver. And so will he be better by the season's end? Yeah, absolutely. But I do think that the hype got a little probably out of control, given that we still have seen, even in the Olympics, when he would have these great runs, that most of the game it would be like, yeah, he looks a little out of control. It's going to be a process, Victor. He's still so young. I do think the hype is a little ahead of where Victor's game is at right now.
I completely agree. So when you look at this with Wemby, it took some of the luster off. Make no mistake about it. But people are going to come at Victor Wembanyama now. Like it's just is what it is. You're in your second year of the league. Like people are going to try to come at. They're going to test you now. Like you're getting all this hype. You're a generational player, and this doesn't take anything for how I view Wemby and the way that his career is going to go. Not at all. He's going to be fine. Like Matt said, by the end of the season, he's going to be perfectly fine. But now you got to deal with. People are literally going to see you now on the schedule, and other centers are going to try to attack you, and they're going to try to see what that added muscle has done. They're going to try to see what you added to your game because they got a lot of tape on you. Now they want to see how you grow, and that's going to be one of the most interesting stories this year for Wemby, in my opinion, is like when now that he's going to be targeted, how does he adapt to that? And I think that trial by fire is going to be good for him in the long run, but there's going to be some games out here where Wemby looks a little mortal, and I think that's probably good for him in the long run.
Matt, you mentioned the weight, and I think he's been very explicit about like taking his time and being slow about putting that weight on and being very like methodical about that. But it does make you wonder if maybe they might speed up that timeline as this season progresses. Anything with Victor and the talent that he has around him. I mean, I think a lot of people in the preseason were quick to jump on the Spurs, possible play-in battle, possible play-in contender here, but did we get a little ahead of ourselves?
I think probably a little bit. I think they'll be better. I have them in the 30s. I think they'll be better than last season. Hard not to at 22 wins. So I think they're going to be like 35 wins and just outside the play-in tournament. Like they'll be ready for the jump next season. But I mean, as far as the other guys go, I thought everybody else played pretty well last night. Chris Paul was doing Chris Paul things. Harrison Barnes had a phenomenal game for them. After looking miserable in preseason, Barnes was great in that game. They had great defense in the first half, and then they got blitzed for 40 in the third quarter because the Mavs are really good. Like this was a high level of competition for them. But I'm actually not going to put this one on the other guys. I thought Sohan played well. The reality is that if Wembanyama has a better game than having 17 points on 18 shots, they're in a much better position to steal this game. Sometimes like Heavy's going to be the crown, kiddo. This is just going to be how it is. He's got to play better. Everything starts with him. If Victor Wembanyama has a bad night, the Spurs are going to have a very low expected win probability.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that happened on the same night that Chet Holmgren debuted and looked very, very good. Let's move to Holmgren and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Holmgren held his own against Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets despite not having his front court mate in Isaiah Hartenstein due to injury. Here's Locked On Thunder host Rylan Stiles with his take.
City Thunder got an impressive statement win over the Denver Nuggets. No Isaiah Hartenstein, no Jay Will, no backup center whatsoever. Does not matter when Chet Holmgren plays this way. 25 points, 14 rebounds, and 6 stocks. He was insane in his season 2 debut. Whenever the Thunder run the Nuggets out of their own gym, it's impressive. When they do it while playing at best a B game with little to no of their traditional rotation and still had more depth than Denver to run them off the floor, it's impressive. It's why they're title contenders. It's why everyone is so high on this team. A massive statement in the Mile High City.
Okay, feel free to give me your thoughts on Chet Holmgren's performance last night, but what I'm really interested in is you've got two teams here in the Boston Celtics and the Oklahoma City Thunder that a lot of prognosticators had as preseason favorites in their respective conferences. Now, they both have statement wins to start the season. Haize, who is more intimidating to you right now that you've finally seen them in action, Boston or OKC?
I mean, we were talking about more intimidating is Boston for sure. Like that defense and what Boston can do and just how efficient they are, what they do well. Like they just understand exactly who they are. They play to their strengths. They try to take the strengths away from other teams, and they're the defending champion. So I'd be remiss if I did not say that Boston is showing more right now. But don't overlook the OKC Thunder, especially when Isaiah Hartenstein gets back. Like they added 2 players in Hartenstein and Alex Caruso. They're just going to help magnify things that team already did well while also bringing some things. Now, I know Hartenstein, we're waiting a while till he comes back, but like even Alex Caruso in this game, like the way that he moves all around that court and the defensive intensity that he brings, whether he's scoring or not, it's going to be really big for that team in the OKC Thunder that I think already led the league in deflections last year. And then you add Alex Caruso, I think was in the top 5 of deflections the last couple of years. Like that team is going to get out in transition fast. They're dangerous as well. But to me, I'm still going to give it to Boston. They're the defending champions.
No way. It's OKC, man. Michael Malone described playing the Thunder last year as it's like a root canal, and that seems accurate. The Celtics are the defending champs, and you're right. They do deserve credit. Like we have to give them the appropriate amount of credit, which I think is hard for a lot of reasons. They're an awesome team. The Celtics are so great. No one's scared of them. Come on. Like they still feel beatable. They're very good. They're awesome. They still are beatable unless you're the Knicks. So like everybody else, though, I don't think is necessarily scared of them. Thunder. If you're like, well, how am I going to be scared of all these kiddos? Look at this, man. I'm watching that game last night in the arena, and you survive the first couple of minutes with Shea and Dort and Chet, and you get through that, and it's like, oh, and here comes Casey Wallace and Alex Caruso and Aaron Wiggins, all of these guys, and they all do the same stuff. I talked to Michael Malone before the game, asked him a question in the press conference, rather. And I was like, hey, what is it that makes them get every team kind of away from their game plan? Because everybody feels that they have to keep up with OKC. And he's like, it's not just that they have shooters. It's that they have shooters who can all drive and pass and defend. Boston is not that. Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, come on now. You want those guys or do you want the guys on OKC's bench? I think the bench is the differentiator here. It was a really impressive game last night, not because they beat Denver on the road, which is a tough spot, but because of how they did it and Chet looking like an absolute monster. OKC is the answer here.
Fair to say that Boston is the finished product. Like we kind of know what that is, even though we're still waiting on KP to come back and for them to fully form as an entity. But with OKC, I mean, there seems to be still a ton of growth and unknown that we have to deal with there.
I'll go further. I think Boston's peaking now. I think Boston's peaking right now. Won the championship, built up all the year, 64 wins. They look absolutely unstoppable. All these threes versus the Knicks, all these threes versus the Wizards. They're peaking right now. I say this as somebody that watched the Denver Nuggets last year look absolutely unstoppable the first 2 weeks of last season after winning the title. How'd that work out? I'm not saying Boston's not going to repeat. They're going to be in that conversation. Again, they're great coached. Tatum looks phenomenal this year. They're going to be in that conversation. But I'm not sure that they're going to playing at this level for a long time is extremely difficult in the NBA. I'm just saying, let's not go ahead and get ahead of ourselves with a Sharpie with the Celtics.
To that point that Matt makes as well, I think you got to look at a lot of times teams after winning the title, they learn how to pace themselves that following year, right? And Boston doesn't seem to be pacing themselves. So great point there.
Okay, the Boston Celtics are taking a lot of threes. That much we know. A couple of unknowns, but that much we know. It seems like every NBA team is taking a lot of threes right now. Is it bad for the game? Matt and Haize are going to give you the definitive answer on this show. That's coming up on Locked On NBA. Hey, NBA fans, listen up. You can start the NBA season with the big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you place your bets. And in the last segment, you heard us talking a lot about Victor Wembanyama and the odds that he had going into the season. Right now, FanDuel still has him as the favorite for most improved player, and they seem to love to give that award to the second-year player. So and Chet Holmgren, I guess technically second year, right? And you have to scroll down a little bit to get to his name. Plus 2,500, the odds for Chet Holmgren to win most improved player. Those odds looking a little better, I think, after his opening night performance. Okay, so you can get started with FanDuel right now. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Thanks so much for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Your favorite Locked On podcast now has a newsletter. Go to LockedOnDaily.com and find your favorite NBA team's newsletter. Get their recaps and writing from Katie Heindel of Basketball Feelings, Mike Shear of Basketball Poetry. It's a really great product. Again, LockedOnDaily.com. The NBA shift to the three-point line has been a long time in the making, but it seems like teams are even more three crazy than usual. And it began with this sort of conversation about the three craziness began with Boston's opening night 60-plus attempts. Here's Locked On Celtics host John Corrales after their night 2 win.
Losing their mind over 61. Side note here. The 61 number was fake. That was just a fake number too, because the Celtics were gunning for that record. They put up 61 three-pointers. They put up 13 in the last 8.5 minutes. That was not how they would normally finish the game. That was probably like a 55 three-pointer thing. 55 is high, but not like 61. People are like, oh my God. It's like, calm down, folks. Calm down. See, this is like normal. 45 three-pointers. That's kind of a normal range in today's NBA.
All right. Is it fake news, this conversation about threes? Matt, you actually kicked off this conversation pre-show, sending me a clip from Nick Wright's latest show where he basically said this isn't good television. Is 45-plus three-point attempts being the new normal? If that is the new normal, as John Corrales says there on Locked On Celtics, is that good for the NBA, Matt?
Everyone has their opinions on this. I think that a lot of people want to see balance. They want to see different stuff. They don't want homogenized NBA. One of the things that's interesting, though, is the Celtics don't run a lot of pick and roll. And for most of the 2010s, we only had pick and roll. That was it. It was just pick and roll, kick the shooters. That was the formula. The Warriors kind of revolutionized it with a motion offense, and the Celtics are doing something that's more simple than that, where it's less motion and more drive and kick oriented. But the 3-point volume, I think everybody just kind of looks at it and goes, man, it's just like they're all just like jacking up threes when the Celtics really do create good rhythm shots. The biggest problem here to me is actually not about that. It's about the inability of teams to be able to game plan night to night because of the schedule. If you could build a game plan for Boston, you can slow them down. You figure out how to make rotations correctly and put them in situations where they have to drive and then rotate down while still staying home on shooters. Instead, most teams are running their base defense. You know what that means? Helping off. And the minute you help off, they're kicking, and those guys have absolutely zero hesitation in firing up that three immediately upon the catch. You can game plan for it, but no one gets a game plan in the NBA because of the schedule. So if we want to solve this, that's going to have to be the issue. I don't think it's a huge problem because I watched games in the 2000s. I'm old enough to remember Antoine Walker and Ricky Davis going at it. I know what it was like. You don't want to go back there. You don't know the things I've seen, people. Embrace this current style of basketball because it could be a lot worse.
Okay, but did we swing too far in the other direction, Haize? Well, did we swing too far away from physicality and into this zone where sort of the uniqueness of talent, the different styles of play, have we gone too far in the other direction?
I don't think so. Like, other than Boston, there's 7 teams in the NBA averaging over 43 3-point attempts per game. Like, and even with that said, the game changes. It modernizes every 10, 12 years. Like, it's gonna come back around. We're gonna see physicality again. It is what it is. And I always go to my son on this. I have an 18-year-old son. I know I don't look that old. God bless me. But with that said, they love watching this type of thing. This is how they play basketball now. And I think for us, the older guys, yeah, we look at it and say it, but like for a lot of people now that are the almost target demo for the NBA, this is what they've seen for the last 10 years. This is what they've seen it grow to get to this point. And they're going to watch it as it overcorrects again back to the other way in the next 5-6 years, whatever happens.
Well, I'll stand up for Nick Wright here a little bit because I think you do risk de-emphasizing the like television portion of this, the entertainment portion of this, if we're going to de-emphasize stuff that happens at the rim. Exciting things happen at the rim. Highlight level things happen at the rim. And I do question what kind of excitement can be generated by a highlight reel of 29 made threes.
You know what's funny, though? We're seeing the same problem in the NFL. Everyone's playing too deep safety now because they don't want to give up the explosive play. So that's why you're having to see Patrick Mahomes just work in the middle and running the ball because every team is like, we're not getting beat deep. We're not getting beat deep. And this is kind of the opposite problem in the NBA, which is every team's going, we're only going to beat you from deep. You have to adjust coverages. Like, that's the reality of it. And so, like, yeah, would it be great if we saw more action at the rim? I think so. Like, I want more balanced style. I want different types of play styles. I don't want there to be one quote unquote meta for every team to be trying to get to. But you have to be able to prove that you can't just play that way. Right now, no one's showing Boston that they can't play that way. You know, the Knicks were supposed to be able to do it. Not great, Bob. So, like, you're just going to have to be able to do a better job of defending it. And again, I just think this gets back to, if you give teams time to game plan and actually scout and actually work on these things, then they can slow these teams down. But with where the rules, with where the officiating is at, because we're not seeing that officiating from last season right now, free throw rate's up. If you can't contain on the perimeter, there's no other option for you. There are things the league can do, but I think it's more complicated than just they should stop shooting threes. That's just dumb.
Oh, right. And you're not going, yeah, exactly. I mean, these teams are all motivated to win. They are going to exploit every single advantage. I wonder too because you're mentioning the schedule a lot there, and I don't think the NBA is anywhere near getting rid of games. But if there were more time, it just seems like the time that teams have to get ready for a season has dwindled, whether it's training camps reducing in amount of time that they have. But they have to explore something, don't they, Haize, to give these teams more opportunities to game plan here.
Yeah, I mean, something has to be done, and I think what the NBA try to cut down travel days, and they're slowly trying to figure this thing out. It's not as easy as that we would like it to be, but I think the NBA is trying to figure out. They're starting to go in the right direction. It's just going to take some time.
We would just be in such a good spot if it was like, hey, Celtics are playing Knicks on Friday. The Knicks have 3 days to game plan. Now, the Knicks had 2 months of game plan. That didn't work. But like most teams, if they've got an opportunity with 3 days to be able to work up a game plan, it's more excitement. It's more interesting. You can talk about practice. Imagine practice. What a concept. Teams getting to practice. But unfortunately, the owners and the players both want the money, so we're not going anywhere.
We talking about practice? We're talking about practice?
That's a great point too, because like a lot of times, I think most people may not know, like teams don't get to practice a lot during the week. It's shoot-arounds. That's it. They don't get to practice a lot. So,
okay, well, we're going to get a few days off. We will be back on Monday. If you like what you heard today, subscribe to Locked On NBA wherever you get podcasts, including on YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in to the first couple of inaugural episodes of this new version of Locked On NBA. And thanks so much to Matt Moore and Haize for offering all of that insight. And thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen. Enjoy this weekend's action. Be kind to each other. And we will see you right back here on Monday's edition of Locked On NBA.